In the heart of Chicago, a crisis persists. Black communities face disproportionate rates of homelessness, a symptom of deep-rooted housing discrimination. Join us as we explore the historical legacy and present-day realities of Black homelessness in the Windy City. Our story begins in the early 20th century, a time when Black Chicagoans faced systematic barriers to housing. Restrictive covenants and redlining confined Black families to segregated neighborhoods, denying them access to the American dream of home ownership. Kitchenette Building by Gwendolyn Brooks and Native Son by Richard Wright both portray the struggle of Black people in Chicago to secure stable housing. These works reflect the harsh realities faced by residents confined to cramped, substandard dwellings due to restrictive covenants and discriminatory housing policies.
I just hope you understand that our house don't always look like this. You must come again.
One such true story, involving Carl Hansberry's fight against racial restrictions in housing, inspired the renowned play Raisin in the Sun by his daughter Lorraine. Despite legal victories, including a landmark Supreme Court ruling, the fight for fair housing continues, as evidenced by the persistent challenges faced by Black communities in assessing affordable housing in Chicago. Segregation wasn't just about where you could live. It determined access to education, employment, and opportunities for generational wealth. These injustices continue to shape the landscape of Black homelessness in Chicago today. Today, the legacy of housing discrimination persists. Black Chicagoans make up the majority of the city's homeless population, facing eviction, unaffordable rents, and a lack of support services. Over half of Chicago's homeless population is Black, despite comprising only a third of the city's overall population. It's a crisis that demands urgent action.
It's
okay.
expensive to live in Chicago.
Yeah.
Like, every time I look up, the rent doubles, triples.
Okay. Chicago's known as one of the most segregated cities in the country.
I've noticed that.
Yeah. How do you think that impacts the Black community?
Not at all.
It doesn't impact us?
I don't even notice it. Until I did notice it, then I really didn't care.
Say more about how you noticed it. What did you notice?
Because I noticed that Black people are over here, Mexican people are over here, Chinese people are over here, white people are over there.
How do you think that impacts housing?
By being segregated?
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think they could more the better housing by, the different streets and stuff like that.
That's not Black.
Yeah.
So they give us the scraps to say.
Yeah, and the migrants too.
Migrants, better housing for them, you thinking?
Yeah, they get better housing than me. They get $9,000, I get nothing.
Yeah. How does that make you feel?
Horrible.
The Chicago Coalition for the Homeless is leading efforts to combat homelessness, particularly focusing on racial disparities in housing. Black communities are disproportionately affected by homelessness in Chicago. Over half of those experiencing homelessness in the city are Black, and nearly 70% of the non-asylum seeking homeless population is Black. The reality of being Black and homeless in Chicago is challenging. To address this crisis, the Bring Chicago Home ballot measure was proposed, aiming to provide substantial funding for homelessness programs. It was a collaborative effort by advocates, including Brian Rogers, who had experienced homelessness firsthand. Rogers, formerly homeless due to incarceration and mental health challenges, joined the movement after connecting with the Chicago Coalition for the Homeless. Witnessing the homelessness crisis in Chicago, he realized the critical need for stable housing. Through his involvement with the Bring Chicago Home, Rogers aimed to make a difference by sharing his experiences and advocating for lasting solutions to homelessness in the city. Bring Chicago Home aimed to tackle homelessness by raising real estate transfer taxes, generating funds for programs like the Homelessness Prevention Program and Housing First. Despite its potential, the initiative faced opposition, leaving effective solutions for homelessness underfunded, and unable to meet the city's needs. Advocates emphasize the urgent need for sustainable funding to address Chicago's homelessness crisis. Stories like the Hemmings family featured in the Chicago Defender reflects the enduring struggle for equitable housing faced by Black families in Chicago. Carrie Hemmings, his wife, and their 11 children faced eviction nearly 80 years ago from their Southside apartment in Chicago's Black Belt due to unsanitary and overcrowded conditions. Despite efforts from neighbors, churches, and advocacy groups like the United People's Housing Committee, the Hemmings' fate remains unknown. Their experience underscores systematic barriers to accessing affordable housing, as highlighted by the Housing Authority's inability to accommodate their large family and their inability to access welfare due to lack of permanent address. Today, the fight for housing equity continues with initiatives like BCH. Supporters remain steadfast in their commitment to address the persistent homelessness crisis, recognizing that real change requires ongoing dedication. As Schinkelberg notes, while one election may not alter the course, the work to ensure housing justice for all must persist, honoring the legacy of those who have fought for it before.